Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. Today, we will be digging into a conversation on career growth, the importance of networking, and work-life balance. I can't think of many people I know in my network who truly exude this more than Lindsey. So, Lindsey, thank you so much for being here today. Can you tell the listeners a little bit about yourself and your career journey so far?
Sure. Yeah. Thanks, Nikki. Thanks for having me. So my name's Lindsey Kromm. On a personal note, I live in Fitchburg. I have four kids, ranging from 4, 6, 12, and 15. So little stage of everything that we're working through right now, that go to school in Oregon. And from a career perspective, I went to UW-Madison for accounting, got my master's in accounting, started my career as a CPA in public accounting, and did that for a few years before realizing that that wasn't going to be my forever job, and kind of pivoted at that point for a short stretch as a personal trainer before coming back into public accounting for about 6 years, but in a different role, where I was a financial recruiter, or affectionately called headhunter. Learned a ton about people and sales and rejection and professionalism. Like, that was where a lot of lessons in my kind of career journey started. And then after kind of seeing that chapter closing, I recruited myself, as the story goes, to a client, because I really wanted that experience outside of kind of one firm and supporting all the local businesses, but being inside one business and kind of growing within that. So, my most recent role, I had several different positions within a medical technology company based out of Fitchburg, primarily customer facing roles, but crossing over into operations and sales, and really grew as a leader in that organization, and spent about 8 years there. And good timing catching me in this conversation. I'm actually starting my next career opportunity on Monday, where I'm going to be moving to another Madison-based company, healthcare consulting industry, where I'll take my first position really stepping out of customer-facing team leadership, and leading operations and finance for that company. So, a lot of different kind of jigs and jags. And at the time, as I moved from one position to the other, it just sort of worked. But when I look back, there's many things that connect them in the ways that they prepared me for the next step. And so, like, it's fun in hindsight to look back and see how purposeful it was, even though at the time, sometimes it didn't always feel that way.
Awesome. I don't even know when I first knew you. I was thinking of that before today's conversation. I just know in my HR days, you guys were like the go-to headhunter. And I think
Mhm.
particularly at that time, we tended to have a lot of payroll accounting needs. So like your name was always like highly recommended, and I always loved working with you. And then when I left HR and saw your son's name on a hockey roster and was like, wait, is this the same one? And I looked at your LinkedIn, I'm like, holy smokes, like I feel like hockey's a full-time job as it is. Like, how do you balance this all? Because again, four kids, and moving up the ladder and things like that. So can you talk to us a little bit about how you've managed all the chaos while still pursuing a career?
Yeah. And I know this is like a 30-minute conversation, so probably won't be able to tackle the whole topic. But I think, there's different meanings to balance in different seasons, and when your children are in different things. And so, I always haven't always been able to do that, actually. And I think I actually feel like I'm pretty good at that now. But it's from mistakes that I've made or learnings along the way. So I feel like in the early, maybe like first 5 years, call it, of my career, was a lot of hustle, and it was a lot of effort and a lot of hours and a lot of time that I put into my career. And there were sacrifices that I made in some of those times where I felt like I was missing out on some things. And it was never, for prolonged stretches. It wasn't like, oh my gosh, I missed a year of this. It was like when I was a CPA and I was working 80 plus hours during tax season for those like 2 to 3 months, I like caught myself and I was like, oh, this isn't working. This isn't what I want. So I felt like I kind of course corrected along the way. But like when my daughter, who's 12 now, turned 4, I was in that 100% commission, like go, go, go mode. And I remember not taking her birthday off. And it was her golden birthday when she turned 4. And I felt so much guilt about that. And I remember talking to my boss at the time, which was just an incredible mentor for me and continues to be, and telling her that I had this guilt. And she was like, listen to that and learn from that. And like, don't do that again. Like this, you will never remember. I remember what she said. You will never remember this day at work, but you will always remember that you didn't go to her 4th golden birthday. And that like really resonated with me. And, there's been many other kind of learnings along the way where you like catch yourself and you're like, okay, don't do that again. So like one of the strategies now that I do is I actually feel like I'm pretty confident in my time off. So a lot of people don't use their time off or they feel guilty taking time off, and I don't. Like I prioritize when things are important at home and I block my calendar and I balance that with things that are important at work. And I don't use my time just for when my kids are sick or when we're going on a vacation. Like I actually use quite a bit of my time away from work to be completely by myself. So like one of the things that I do is I have really random days that I take off every single year. So like 1 a quarter. So for in February, I celebrate Groundhog's Day every year by myself. I take the day off and I have done different things over the years. Sometimes I'll go to a spa, sometimes I will do nothing. And then I take usually my birthday off, and then I usually take the first day of school off as well. And then one more around the holidays, kind of by myself. And so those are days where it's just like, I'm taking a vacation day. No one's going to be home. I'm going to do whatever I want to do for this day. And every year it happens. And so those are some of the, I guess, just little tidbits, but I would say I'm never balanced for a sustainable amount of time. It's like you're balancing, it's like more of an activity versus like a state. Um, and the other thing that I would say is that same mentor I mentioned that told me like, don't do that again. I remember going into her office, again, young kids, like in the hustle stage, and just being like, I'm just really struggling because I just want to like kick ass at everything. I want to kick ass at home. I want to kick ass at work. I want to kick ass on my like personal well-being. And she's like, you can, you just can't do it all at the same time. And I feel like as simple as that sounds, I've brought that back to the forefront many times and I've shared that with many people because there's seasons when like stuff's heavier at home and you put more time at home. There's seasons when work is really hard and you got to give a little more at work. And so I just feel like not putting the pressure on myself to have every single facet of my life at its prime at the same time has helped as well.
I love that. And not many people admit that. They either act like, "Oh, you can do it all and it works," or they don't acknowledge like it may not all be at the same time. And I think also the season part, when you're in it, it feels never ending. Like I remember working full time with the young kids and just thinking like the tension headaches were unbearable. But like now I look back and I'm like, that was so fast. Like the Halloween parades and some of these things I missed really did go by quickly, and it didn't last. The stress didn't last forever either. So like every day wasn't like that. One thing I love that you've done is you've done a lot to support other women. I know, especially at your past company, you were 40 under 40 in Madison. Another thing where I was like, told my oldest, "Did you know that their mom was this?" And he was just like, "Whatever." Like, I was like,
He's like,
"The rest
cool.
of you kids,
Don't know what
you
that
don't
is, but okay.
understand." Like I see her at all these hockey games. This is a lot to do all of this. So tell me about what you've done to support other women, and if you have any ideas for other folks out there who might be thinking, I need to do some more to get a little more community around this myself. Like, can you kind of talk us through what you've done and what's helped?
Yeah, sure. And I should give credit to the mentor I keep mentioning, Kim Herlitzka from Truity Partners, has been very formative for me. And so I reference her a lot in these types of conversations. But being in public accounting in a larger firm, they had pretty established different committees to support and people within the business. And one of those was a women's initiative at Baker Tilly, and she was a really integral part of that. And so the first like 8 years of my career, that was just, I just expected that. There was just a very like thoughtful kind of organizational committee to support growth of women. Um, and so when I left Baker Tilly and I went to Terso Solutions, it was a smaller company, earlier stage, still kind of in that high growth mode, and that wasn't part of their path yet. And so I really missed that. I realized that very quickly when I came over, was like, oh, we don't have this like purposeful communication and community where we can talk about what's different for us or what are we struggling with. And so I was supported thankfully by the leadership to just start it. And so found some other women that were at kind of a similar place in their lives and careers to kind of champion it. And we formed that committee at Terso, and that was amazing. It really grew in its support, and then it was sort of the pioneer for other committees, for other, groups within the company that needed kind of intentional support and DEI focus. So that was one thing that I did, and really kind of off the heels of the way that I saw that being done. And then as you do those things, you just realize about yourself, like, wow, I love this. I love seeing like people's eyes light up when they learn something or they like something clicks for them. And it was really like clear to me that like bringing women along in this it's an integral part of what I want to do with when I'm away from my family and at work. So I would say it's less formal than that now, but it's just recognizing the struggle that people are going through, or giving extra time to people that you see potential in that maybe are afraid to ask and things like that. So it's kind of evolved, I would say, from being a really intentional, like formal development of a women's initiative to more informal, like support network and mentoring now.
Do you have any tips for women, or, this could be for men too, but who are on the job search and wondering if they are really getting into a supportive environment? Like, I always feel like the websites, the interviews, they can say it, but any tips you have for them to kind of vet out? Like, is this like, do they walk the walk?
Hmm. Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I think it's a total fair game question in an interview, just
Yeah.
about like talk to me a little bit about what types of communities are within the company, or what types of committees, or what sort of metrics do you guys look at, that sort of thing. Because I think companies that are very serious about it do measure it too, to see like at Terso, we measured like rate of promotions based on gender, longevity and role based on gender, hiring based on gender, and all of those things were precursors to like behind the scenes systems and the ways we were thinking and managing the business as it related to quality. So if it's not being measured, I think that's a question mark of like how formal their programs will be. And it will depend, of course, like on the company and the resources and the size and all of that. But if they're measuring it and keeping a watchful eye on it, that would be a pretty big clue that um, that it's important to them.
I love that. What advice do you have for folks that might be facing overwhelm or burnout right now, and they're still trying to achieve their goals? Like, I talk to clients every day where it's like, do I throw in the towel? Do I give up? Like, they're kind of all over the place. And any tips that you have for folks that are kind of going through that, but yet they want to reach those goals. They want to keep climbing the ladder.
Yeah, I don't know. It's a tough one because it's such a personal journey on like what your situation is and what might be causing that overwhelm. But I can share maybe from my own personal experiences, like I can tell when like things are like the world is coming at me too much, and like I can see a disengagement. Like I can tell that I'm not putting in the energy into the things that I normally would. And you kind of lose that spark. And so in those times for me, what I typically do is I have to find a different avenue to like refuel. So it could be, depending on again the person, maybe you need to take some time off and like really like take care of yourself, like get into some self-care or spirituality or your friendship or your family, like whatever it is that like fuels you, like that might be it. The other thing that I have found to work for me when I'm hitting those sort of ruts is that's when I really activate my community in my professional world too. So that's when I start scheduling coffees with people that influence me or and like people in my network to just like get out of work, get in front of somebody different and just be like, I'm struggling with this. I'm stuck here. Have you ever had that? And like just networking when you're not looking for a job and just saying like, hey, we've known each other professionally. I'm going through something. I need to talk to someone outside my company. Like that's a really good way to kind of just check yourself a little bit, and get a different perspective too.
It kind of leads into my next question. How important has networking been in your career? And also, I know you're a big proponent of it. So especially hard for folks when they're busy. Like they've got the family, they've got all the things going on at home, they're busy at work. I feel like networking is the first thing that gets put to the wayside. Most folks are starting it way too late in the process, and they don't want to admit how important it is. So, given you've used it tremendously in your career, but also the recruiter lens, to us about the importance of networking.
Yes. Yeah, and I've been talking about this a lot lately because it has been such an important um, process and resource for me recently with this kind of career change that I'm making. And so I think there's ways that I'm articulating it now that I didn't really understand what I was doing in the past, but like I've kind of come to this language of well, networking for one is like almost like that dirty word to people. Like I think when they think of it, they picture some conference or some speaker where they're like have their lanyard and their name tag and a drink in one hand and they have to go like introduce themselves and like, oh, I have to ask for a business card and like maybe I'm wrong, but like early days, that's what networking was. And I've kind of shifted my thinking to being like, network is both like a noun and a verb. And I've really realized that like the noun side of it is like all of it. It's like the 80-20 rule. Like you got to spend 80% of the time building your noun. And like what I mean by that is like you've met somebody once, you cross into their path again in a different realm, and you're like, hey, wait a second, we've known each other in this space. Now we know each other here. And you just kind of continue to like deepen the relationships that you have with people that you meet. And they don't always have to be at work or at professional settings. A lot of the people that I would place as like integral in my network, like the noun side, are people I've met through other parents at school, people I've met through our church. They're people that I actually trained when I was a personal trainer, and continued to keep in touch with for 10 years. And it doesn't mean we're sending Christmas cards and meeting quarterly. And, it's like every couple of years when I'm in that overwhelm rut, I'm sending them a message and saying, hey, it's been a long time since we've connected. I see you're still at XYZ company. I'm doing this thing over here. Can we like regroup, reconnect? And so it's little things and you kind of build over time. So I think that's a different way of thinking it. It's like the noun. And then when you have a really big network and you're in a situation where you're looking for a change, you activate it strategically. And that's the like verb side of it. And so for me, over the last year or so, it was really looking at that group of people who know me as a person and as a professional and think how might this person open up some conversations for me or help me in the way that I'm thinking about my career. Not, does this person have any openings at their company? Does this person gonna forward my resume around? It's more like curiosity of like, how might this person see me and help me think about my job and my next step? So yeah, I'm very passionate about networking and just like the mindset of it versus like the action of it. Cause I don't think it needs to be this extroverted, cold call, stranger, small talk conversation. It's very tiny acts. And I don't envision it being outside of business hours. I think to the extent that your, career situation allows it, you're doing it during work, you're doing it during lunch, you're just not doing it all the time where you're taking advantage of your work, but you're sprinkling it in those moments where you need a little spark or just a lunch out of the office to like find your fuel, that kind of thing.
I love that. I always try to tell folks it's like fact finding, like you're trying to learn more information. Like it's not putting yourself out there and selling yourself. Like that comes through a relationship and people knowing you and respecting you. How often do you think networking is a part of people finding job offers right now? From what you've seen from hiring, looking for a job, do you find that about that 80% rule of thumb is correct, or what are you seeing?
Yeah, for sure. I would say 80%, if not higher, honestly. And I have been out of the recruiting world for, long enough that, I can't speak to that like industry in particular, but the like candidate pools for these posted positions are massive. And I think it's, a lot of factors, technology, remote work, just like the robustness of the platforms, all sorts of things. But, you could be one of 1,000 applicants within a couple days, and it's just impossible to get a conversation. And for me personally, strategically seeing what was available in the market, I only had 2 interviews, and both of them were referrals from people that I had been networking with. So I, didn't see a single callback or interview offer to anything else for things that I feel like I was very qualified for. So I think more than ever, honestly, it's important.
And in your new role, will you be doing any hiring? And if so, would you use networking for it? I think we need more hiring managers to explain why they, like I always say, if you need a babysitter or someone to fix your garage door, you ask
Mhm.
around, right? And so I
Oh,
don't
yeah.
get why candidates don't see the benefit to networking from the employer side. So can you give us that employer lens if you had a critical position to fill? How would you fill it?
Yeah, I mean, for sure. I think almost, and I have exhibited that quite a bit in my last role too, where we've built teams, and many of them did come through people that I either knew in the past or have worked with that recommended someone else. So, I mean, we did hire a fair amount of like direct applicants too, but we would always look at a referral with, more detail and more time than just any other applicants. So it's definitely a leg up from the employer side too, because you trust the people that you work with and that they know the culture too that you're looking to protect, and would that person be a fit for it. So I do envision, in my new role that we'll be building teams and not having started yet, not totally sure how the hiring process really comes together, but I was a referral for them. So I can only imagine it will be an important part of the process. So,
Yeah, so true. Thank you so much, Lindsay. Is there anything else you'd like to share with people in terms of growing the career, keeping the networking going without losing their minds, and also anything you want to normalize for them. A lot of times I like to remind folks it's not always going to go perfectly. Like I've had some awful networking situations. And I think sometimes if people just kind of realize that's normal, they're not all like that, get over it, don't stop, that can be helpful to hear because nobody talks about that.
Mhm. Yeah, I totally agree with that. I've had many coffees that you're like, well, this is going to be a short one, which is fine. But yeah, I think probably just one last thought I would share is you are not struggling alone. You know, like there are people that I've worked with in my last job that, I didn't interact with personally really well or on a regular basis. And so there was sort of this persona or image that like I had it all together and that like I, was balancing everything perfectly and life was in it. That's just not true. Like people don't always show all their personal kind of struggles and cracks, but they're there and everybody's going through it. And so like don't take what you see at face value and like if you are struggling, like just talk to someone that you think you admire that you think is doing it well. And I guarantee you they're going to be like, oh my gosh, I screamed at my kid to get their shoes on and I left feeling like garbage today, So I think just like you don't see the whole picture and that like everybody's got a story and like stuff they're struggling with at home, no matter how it might look on the outside.
I love that. And that's so true. I mean, even before we started today, I'm like, my shoulders are up to my ears because I can hear my youngest like puttering around the kitchen. And I'm like, how many times did I have to tell you to stay away? But we're also both like, that's life. That's normal. Like,
Yep.
nobody has it perfectly together. And I really love the advice to talk to somebody else because it can just be so relatable and make you feel so much more human. So thank you so much for your time today,
Yeah, you're
Lindsay.
welcome.
Best of luck in your new role. And if anyone wants to connect with Lindsay, she's on LinkedIn. So I certainly recommend that and get your networking going. So thank you.
Yeah, you bet. Thanks, Nikki.
Bye bye.
Bye.